Last year, Puka Nacua pretty much slid all the way under the radar. Like, we were telling people to draft him, but like in the third, fourth round, nobody expected him to do what he did and came out, had the best rookie wide receiver season of all time. So there is a metric that Puka Nacua was very high in that could be a predictor of future sleepers, future guys that we don't expect to do well, but they have this good metric. The metric is yards per route run. And you might be saying, I've heard about yards per route run. Every Dynasty person talks about it, but yeah. So yards per route run, if you're not new to it, you know that it's been explored as one of the most predictive metrics in football as to a player's success translating from college to the NFL. Okay, if you're not familiar with yards per route run, basically the metric is exactly what it is. It's how many yards do you get for every route that you run. So, for example, if Stephon Diggs finishes with 89 yards total in a game and he runs a total of 40 routes, that's routes on passing plays, routes on running plays, all encompassing. You just would take that 89 divided by 40, and it's like 2.1 something. But anyways, that would be his yards per route run. Yards per route run may not seem like that advanced of a metric, but basically what it's calculating is efficiency when you think about it. So take a look at this. This is 2023's yards per route run leaders. At the top, we had Marvin Mims. So Marvin Mims was a little bit of an interesting case this year because he did have some flashes but didn't do much. Jackson Smith-Njigba was second. And then Puka Nacua. Really the only advanced metric that Puka Nacua ranked highly in is yards per route run. I'm going to preface this whole video because this is going to be interesting. I think you'll find our research interesting. I'm going to preface it by this. Yards per route run will not guarantee that somebody's going to hit, and it also will not there are just as many busts here as hits.
Yep.
So, but there is an interesting correlation we were able to find within Ryan Bread, our lead analyst's analytical model. And this all started with a tweet from Ryan, who was talking about how important yards per route run is for NFL fantasy scoring and predicting that. And he said it could be helpful to identify sleepers like Puka Nacua in the 23 class. So then he looked at the 2024 guys and identified that as well. So that's kind of our goal today. We already mentioned Puka Nacua was in the top 3 for yards per route run in 2023. So let's look at 2024. Malik Neighbors, number 1. Marvin Harrison Jr., number 2. So again, predicting fantasy scoring, it does predict the studs for the most part. It doesn't mean you aren't going to be a stud if you don't have a high yards per route run. Looking at 2023 again, Josh Downs at the bottom, Tank Dell at the bottom. And by bottom, I mean the bottom of the top 10. So these guys are all still guys that are the highest. But you will notice that Jordan Addison, Rashee Rice, Puka Nacua, JSN, all of those guys were in the top 10 yards per route run. You'll also notice on this list, Quentin Johnson was in here.
Dontavian Wicks.
Dontavian Wicks is interesting though because Dontavian Wicks actually was ranked, and you look at the class rank here on the screen, 22nd in his class according to Ryan's analytical score that's calculated in his database called the Bakery. But again, looking here, Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr. for 2024, and then rounding out the top 6, Johnny Wilson, Troy Franklin, Ladd McConkey, and Javon Baker. So this is interesting. And what originally prompted me to ask this question was, is Ladd McConkey a sleeper for this year's class? And then I said, I wonder what his yards per route run is. And lo and behold, he is top 5 in yards per route run in this year's class.
I like that.
So let's
like that?
You like that? Let's look a little bit at some past years and keep trying to dig through and see if we can identify a trend here. Looking at 2022. Now, the top guy here is Justin Ross. But nobody in their right mind would have thought Justin Ross was going to be a good NFL player, though. Nobody at all.
A lot of people did, but
I know.
I'm mainly just trolling. They took because of the yards per route.
I'm mainly just trolling Ryan here. Justin Ross is actually the reason Ryan created this whole thing. Christian Watson was up there. Christian Watson was 7th in his class, but 2nd in yards per route run. Garrett Wilson and Treylon Burks and Drake London, and obviously guys that got picked in the first round of that draft. I don't even know who the next guy is. I don't even think he got drafted. But then you have Sky Moore, Wandale. So again, there's a guy that had a yards per route run that we're just like, that's nobody. Khalil Shakir, Jalen Tolbert, and Romeo Doubs didn't crack the top, however many is on this list, I think 12. And what's interesting about that, actually, is Romeo Doubs was a sleeper. And if you'll notice, on the Bakery, which is where we're pulling these screenshots from, they're separated into tiers, and basically it's separated into I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different or 6 different color tiers here. And I think Brian put a formula in that automatically tiers them all up. They're basically just big groups, and so for each class you have these color tiers. Yeah. So here's something I'm noticing. Let's start at 2021. Let's go back. The only 2021 guy that was top however many this is 12 in yards per route run was Tylan Wallace. Okay. He was and I'm going to look specifically at the pink color here. So this is the pink tier. And what I noticed when I was looking through some of this data,
a lot of day 3 guys,
is the day 3 guys, or in visually, the guys in the pink tier in the bakery in the analytical model. A lot of these guys did break out. Tylan Wallace, not elite, so I can't say he's a stud, but he's not been nothing. 2022, Khalil Shakir, Jalen Tolbert, Romeo Dubs. So you have at least one guy there, Romeo Dubs, that was startable in this last year. Khalil
Shakir has increased in value.
Has increased in value. Jalen Tolbert was somebody who people were saying was a sleeper and didn't really pan out too much. Then you have 2023. Puka Nacua, Trey Palmer.
Who has increased in value.
And Tank Dell in that pink tier. Not to mention going a tier below the pink tier into that gray tier, we've got Dontavian Wicks. The tiers are basically like where they ranked in comparison to all prospects since like 2017. Right. So Dontavian Wicks was the wide receiver 22 in his class. Definitely not the wide receiver 22 in his class after this year. In fact, I'm curious where he is on Keep Trade Cut, because if I had to guess, I bet he's a top 50 wide receiver right now.
Yeah, he's actually. I just saw him recently because I was looking at some targets when we were doing some blueprints, but he's the cheapest 44. Of the 3 receivers. Yeah, wide receiver 44. That sounds about right.
But that's still, I mean, you were drafting him in the 4th round. That's really good value there. So the other part of this, though, is, and then let's look at 2024.
I was going to say 2024, this is important because let's talk about these guys, because you guys might not know a ton of information about these players. The 2 guys we want to look at specifically that are going to be highest in the yards per route run list here is Johnny Wilson. He's the 6'7", 250 receiver from Florida State, who was actually the lead wide receiver production-wise in 2022, and then Keon Coleman overtook him this year. He is thought to potentially translate to tight end because he's huge. I don't think we've ever seen a wide receiver that big actually end up continuing to be a wide receiver in the NFL. But that's something interesting to note. Even if he translates to tight end, he could have some nice production in fantasy. And then Ladd McConkey being the other big guy, with Javon Baker being right after him. But Ladd McConkey has been a guy that's gotten a lot of buzz, especially since the Senior Bowl, where he was torching corners. And when you see buzz like this happen, you kind of want to fact check it with some statistics. So I think this is an important thing to note. You can't just look at yards per route run and say it's the end all be all and say that it's a direct predictor to who's going to be good or bad in the NFL. It's not. It really isn't. But what it is a tool. It's a tool when you do your homework and you watch these players like Ladd McConkey, and you see what he does in the Senior Bowl. You see what he is as a talent. You look at the situation in Georgia, and you're like, okay, this guy seems to be pretty solid. Last year, we liked Puka Nacua as a prospect. We didn't look at his yards per route run after that to really validate what we thought. So we weren't incredibly bold with our Puka Nacua prediction other than take him in the 4th round. We weren't screaming his name.
Yeah,
we'll probably be screaming Ladd McConkey's name now.
Because Ladd McConkey is probably going to get 2nd round draft capital instead of 4th. He's coming from a Power 5 school. He is top 5 in yards per route run. So was Puka. Again, it could be you could say this is a Ladd McConkey tweet, and it is, but it may even be a Johnny Wilson tweet. I mean, if Johnny Wilson really goes to tight end, Johnny Wilson could be pretty good as a tight end, pretty efficient.
Yeah.
Javon Baker, even obviously not a Power 5 guy out of UCF, but at the same time, a guy that right now, I mean, has potential to go as a day 2 pick in the NFL draft. Because every year you have these day 2 wide receivers you didn't expect to go there, right? Javon Baker could be one of these guys. These are some guys, but I mean, it doesn't mean, these guys are guaranteed studs, draft them as early as you can. But what it does mean is when you get to the 3rd and 4th round, how are you deciding who you're taking? And when you do have a metric that's as predictive as this in terms of fantasy points scored, again, not direct correlation, not 1-to-1, but at the same time, it's worth noting, right?
Yeah. And this will definitely show up in our rookie draft guide, which we are about to release in flockfantasy.com if you want to talk about that.
We need to talk about that. Our rookie draft guide is out officially. It's big news time. And again, huge. The whole rookie draft guide right now, version 1 is out. We have over 35 prospects that we have put into this rookie draft guide. Future versions are going to include our rankings, our official rookie draft strategy for 2024. But we also, it is a ton of analytical stuff, but laid out in a simple way. So that was the goal behind the rookie draft guide. We want you guys to be able to glance at the rookie draft guide and not only see who a player is, the overview of him, but also be able to look at some numbers that actually make sense to you and quickly glance over and see where a prospect is grading out, like according to sites like PFF and things like that, in relation to their league mates. So that's available now when you use code DOMAIN at flockfantasy.com/domain. So when you use code DOMAIN, you get a blueprint, team blueprint number 1, and you also get the Dynasty Rookie Draft Guide, the Domain Rookie Draft Guide for 2024 version 1. And we will keep updating this version. We'll keep adding prospects. We'll add our full rankings and strategy, and all of that into this Rookie Draft Guide is going to be comprehensive so that when you go into your Rookie Draft Guide, you can have this thing open. That is the goal. Again, unlock the blueprint, team blueprint for yourself, which is a comprehensive plan for your entire Dynasty team, and the Rookie Draft Guide when you use code DOMAIN at flockfantasy.com/domain. Yeah, like I said, choose another Flockature to unlock that stuff, but you have to use code DOMAIN. So, but good point. And again, like the Rookie Draft Guide, we included a lot of these metrics in there.
Yeah, and we've been looking at the positive side, really, of the yards per route run here and how you could really find those sleepers like the next Puka Nacua or even the next half Puka Nacua. That would still be very successful. And I kind of want to look at the guys that had really good yards per route run, but they didn't pan out. And why is that? Can we really kind of come up with a general, maybe generalized reason for why that's the case? So Justin Ross, obviously going to be the first guy that we can really think of who goes undrafted because of his injury issues. He had dang near 5 yards per route run at Clemson in the class of 2022. He was at the top in that class. And he was a guy that I think a lot of people took a shot on in Dynasty because they looked at those yards per route run. They looked at what he did as a true freshman at Clemson, and they're like, this guy could absolutely be legit in the NFL. I personally think Justin Ross is a significant outlier when it comes to failed predictions. And as much as we like to make fun of people who are still believers in Justin Ross, I do kind of give him a pass because he really was a unicorn of a prospect and a situation and like a draft capital situation and all that. So I kind of look beyond that. But like I see a guy like Treylon Burks, who is 4th in that class draft wise. He was top 5 in yards per route run. How can we avoid someone like him? How can we avoid a Dwayne Eskridge? How can we dodge a bullet of a Tutu Atwell? How can we dodge a Jalen Hyatt bullet? These are kind of the questions that I'm looking at here. Marvin Mims, even. Mims, sure, he showed 1 or 2 games of big playability.
Special teams,
but
though.
That's kind of what he is. Like he didn't really pan out like some of us thought he would. Like I thought he might. Not yet. And he still has a chance. He still has time. But you get what I'm saying here. Like, do you notice a correlation between these prospects? Is it team situation? Is it their well-roundedness as a prospect? Because like I see Treylon Burks and I see Quentin Johnston, and I'm like, we've talked about this before in videos before. Sure, their yards per route run might be good in college, but we know for a fact that even though they have good athletic tools, they're incredibly raw as wide receivers. And while those prospects 10 years ago could have panned out and been very successful in the NFL, it's not showing out now because we're expecting immediate production from wide receivers in the NFL as rookies.
Yeah,
more than we ever have.
Look at 21. Dwayne Eskridge was the yards per route run. In fact, he is one of the highest yards per route run ever, him and Justin Ross. Yeah. And then honestly, I think Kadarius Toney was 2020, right? Because Kadarius Toney was at the top.
Toney was up there too.
Because he was at the top of his class. But I mean, again, it clearly doesn't show a direct correlation. It clearly doesn't mean a whole lot in terms of like, yeah, this guy's absolutely for sure going to be successful in the NFL. So how can we use this? Let's make this applicable. Like I mentioned earlier, what this essentially means is this is going to give you a little bit more of a guided dart throw. Because once you get into the late second round, they're dart throws. They really are. And you're essentially just taking your chance on whoever, a lot of times you're just picking the guy that you want, whatever. This is going to allow, I'm sorry, Kadarius Toney was 2021. He was ahead of Dwayne Eskridge, and his yards per route run was like, I think 5.27.
He had one of the best. Yeah, one of the best yards.
And Kadarius Toney sucks, and he's always sucked. And actually, I thought he sucked from the get-go. So that was one I just saw, and I was like, I don't like Kadarius Toney.
Injury struggles, and he's not a great.
Yeah, right. There's a lot with Kadarius Toney, and also he drops the ball, and whatever. But again, so it doesn't directly predict, but it is going to give me a better idea of dart throws. But it's all about price at that point. See, Kadarius Toney was ranked as the wide receiver 7 in his class according to the Bakery, and Puka Nacua was like 24. So that's the difference. Puka Nacua was a dart throw, but it was a dart throw. You're like, this guy had a really high yards per route run, so maybe I'll take a shot on him over somebody who maybe didn't have as good as, efficiency analytics is as good of a profile as Puka Nacua. So again, the application this year, here are the guys up top that fall in the range of, I would say 18 to 25 that we're going to be looking at taking guided dart throws on this year. We mentioned one of them, Ladd McConkey. We mentioned Johnny Wilson. If Johnny Wilson stays at wide receiver, we still are going to take some guided dart throws on Johnny Wilson.
Maybe, and that's kind of where I'm trying to figure out where I want to draw the line here, because while I think Johnny Wilson is incredibly intriguing as a prospect, I think I'd like him more if he translated to tight end than if he was a wide receiver. Because like we said earlier, there's not a ton of patience right now, especially in the dynasty community from a market value perspective, with these rookie wide receivers now. There's just not. If they put up 500 yards or 600 yards, maybe at best they'll maintain their value. Like, do you really realistically see Johnny Wilson doing that as raw of a prospect as he is? Because he's very physically gifted. Obviously, he's 6'7", 250 is a specimen, and there's not many wide receivers like that. But as a really well-rounded route runner, he's so big, he's not there yet. So I'd almost trust him as a tight end more. But as a wide receiver, if he's in this range, maybe he's the one that I would avoid and expect to be the one that doesn't hit of the guys.
Yeah, but you're getting him in the third or fourth round.
Yeah, maybe. So unless he gets hired,
Ladd McConkey is not going to be there that late because he just won't. Because he's going to get better draft capital. It's going to prop him up a lot. So like, I don't really care what position he's at. If I'm drafting him in the fourth round, like I will take a guided dart throw on Johnny Wilson, even if I don't like him as a prospect. I'll play the analytics game and hope it increases my chances of him hitting by 5%.
Yeah,
I mean, you're talking about marginal advantages, but advantages nonetheless. Javon Baker, I mentioned him.
I was going to say, so Javon Baker is, he's a guy, for those of you who don't know who he is, he's a guy out of UCF who put up 1,100 yards this year on 52 receptions and 7 touchdowns. And then we've got Brendan Rice here, who's out of USC, tied to Caleb Williams. He had 790 yards on 45 receptions, 12 touchdowns. So he was kind of a go-to there in the red zone, especially.
And then some even lower guys, Malik Washington, Dominic Lovett. Like, I mean, those guys are really low. So it's like, those are the guys like that can have a high yards per route run, but when you're looking at other guys in those tiers, like Dontavian Wicks hit, but Dante Demas Jr. or whatever last year, like didn't even get drafted, I don't think. Mike Strawn didn't hit, and Dax Milne didn't hit. Jalen Darden didn't hit. So that gray tier is really, really more hit and miss than the again, that pink tier on the analytical profile, we're kind of like, oh, there's some hits in there. That's where most of the sleeper hits are. It's also where a lot of the busts are.
Yeah. So, and guys, we're not big fans of Xavier Legette really at all. I don't think he's going to amount to much as a prospect or in the NFL. But I'll tell you what, if Xavier Legette falls, like I think he may, especially after he measured out at 6'1" at the Senior Bowl, not 6'3". If he falls and ends up being drafted in the late third, fourth round of your rookie drafts, and you like him as a prospect and you want to take a shot on him, do it.
So this is less of a, you need to do this right now and this is how it works. It's more of a discussion and kind of a presentation of data. Make your own conclusions. Draw your own conclusions from this. Let us know in the comments what you think, because this is just, again, kind of us talking through this metric that has become very popular among dynasty circles to predict NFL fantasy production from college prospects. So do us a huge favor if you play Dynasty. Drop a like on this video if you enjoyed it, if you enjoyed the discussion, and make sure you are subscribed, like I said, if you play Dynasty. And again, if you want a team blueprint, which is a multi-year comprehensive plan for your Dynasty team completed by us, and then a plan afterwards where you get to chat with us one-on-one about your team, all your trades, your league, all of that. And you also want the 2024 version of Dynasty Domain's Rookie Draft Guide, which we just released. Go to flockfantasy.com/domain and choose the Mother Flocker tier to unlock. Like I said, you must use code DOMAIN. Appreciate you guys, and we'll see you later.